I'm Emma, 26 years old, and this past December, my parents told me something that shattered my world. We're canceling Christmas this year. We just need some space. Those words hit me like a physical blow. A Christmas at the Martinez family home had been sacred, untouchable, especially after my devastating breakup with Ryan 6 months earlier. For 26 years, we had never missed Christmas together. My mom, Sophia, 54, would spend weeks transforming our house into a winter wonderland, complete with handmade decorations and the smell of her famous tamales filling every corner. Dad, Miguel, 56, would string lights with meticulous precision, creating displays that neighbors drove by just to admire. My younger sister Anna, 23, would come home from graduate school, bringing her infectious laughter and terrible Christmas sweaters that somehow became family tradition. This year, I needed that tradition more than ever. Ryan had blindsided me in June, announcing he was exploring his options after 3 years together. What I discovered later was that his exploration included my former best friend, Jessica. The betrayal cut deeper than the breakup itself, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. My parents had been my lifeline through those dark summer months. Mom drove 2 hours every weekend just to make sure I was eating, while Dad called daily with dad jokes that weren't funny, but somehow made me smile anyway. They helped me move into a small studio apartment when I couldn't afford our old place alone, and Mom even convinced her church friends to donate furniture so I wouldn't have to sleep on the floor. So when Christmas seemed impossible to face alone, I was counting on being surrounded by family warmth. I picture myself helping Mom in the kitchen, the familiar rhythm of our holiday preparations washing away some of the loneliness that had become my constant companion. That's why Mom's phone call on a Tuesday evening in early December felt like another abandonment. "Emma, Mija," she began, her voice strangely formal. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it's best if we skip Christmas this year." Skip Christmas.
Y rapata, sartén y de miel.
What do you mean, skip Christmas? We need some space this year. Some quiet time. Maybe we can do something small in January instead. The conversation that followed was filled with vague explanations that explained nothing. Mom insisted everything was fine, that they just needed a low-key year. When I pressed for details, she became defensive, suggesting I was being dramatic for wanting to understand why my family's most important tradition was suddenly being discarded. I called Anna immediately, expecting her to share my shock and confusion. "Yeah, it's weird," she agreed. "But honestly, Emma, I've been so stressed with finals and my thesis. Maybe a quiet Christmas wouldn't be the worst thing." Her casual acceptance stung. Anna had her graduate program, her boyfriend, her whole future mapped out. She wasn't clinging to family traditions like a life raft in the aftermath of personal disaster. "Don't you think it's strange that they won't give us a real reason?" I asked. "I guess, but what can we do? We can't force them to host Christmas if they don't want to." After hanging up, I spiraled into dark thoughts. Maybe my parents were tired of dealing with my post-breakup depression. Maybe they'd grown weary of my frequent calls and visits. Maybe they blamed me for the situation with Ryan and Jessica, thinking I should have seen it coming or fought harder to keep him. The rational part of my mind knew these thoughts weren't fair to my parents, who had never shown anything but love and support. But rejection, even perceived rejection, has a way of awakening our deepest insecurities. Still, I decided to respect their wishes. If they needed space, I would give it to them, even though it felt like another loss in a year already full of them. My coworker Lisa immediately invited me to join her family's Christmas when I mentioned my situation. "My mom always makes enough food for an army anyway," she said kindly. "And you know how much my parents love you." I accepted gratefully, though the thought of being a charity case at someone else's family Christmas made my chest tight. Lisa's family was wonderful, but they wouldn't know about Dad's annual reading of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in his terrible Santa voice, or why I always hung my stocking in the exact same spot on the mantel, or the story behind each ornament on our tree. As December progressed, extended family began calling with questions about Christmas plans. The confusion in their voices when I explained that my parents had decided to take a quiet year was painful. My tia Carmen was particularly concerned. "This is very unlike your parents, Mija," she said. "Are you sure everything is okay?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore, but I kept repeating the same vague explanations my mother had given me. By mid-December, my worry had transformed into determination. Whatever was really happening with my parents, they might need support more than they needed space. After another sleepless night, I made a decision that would change everything. I called in sick to work on a Friday and made the 2-hour drive to my childhood home unannounced. Maybe face to face, I could finally understand what was happening with the two people who had always been my emotional anchor. As I pulled into the driveway of the modest ranch house where I'd grown up, my anxiety spiked. The Christmas decorations that usually transformed our front yard into a festive display were notably absent. No lights outlined the roofline, no inflatable Santa graced the lawn, no wreaths hung from the windows. I knocked on the door, heart pounding. When Mom opened it, her expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like panic. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "I was worried about you," I said simply. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside reluctantly, and immediately I noticed the house felt different. Usually by mid-December, every surface would be adorned with holiday decorations. Instead, the living room looked strangely bare, with only everyday furniture and none of the festive touches that typically marked the season. "Is Dad home?" I asked. "He's in the garage," Mom replied, wringing her hands. "Working on organizing some things." As we walked toward the kitchen, I noticed something else unusual. The dining room table, typically kept clear except during holiday preparations, was covered with papers, folders, and what looked like bills or financial statements. "Mom," I said gently, placing my hand on her arm. "What's really going on? And please don't tell me nothing again." Before she could answer, Dad appeared in the doorway from the garage, his expression cycling through surprise, resignation, and something that looked almost like relief when he saw me. "Emma," he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is unexpected." "I'm sorry for just showing up," I said. "But I needed to see you both. Something's wrong, and it's not like you to shut me out." My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Dad sighed heavily and pulled out a kitchen chair. "Let's sit down," he said. We gathered around the kitchen table where so many family discussions had taken place over the years. Mom fidgeted with a pen, avoiding my eyes. Dad looked older somehow, wearier than I remembered from just a few months ago. "We didn't want you to worry," Dad finally said, his voice rough. "Especially after everything with Ryan." "Worry about what?" I asked, my anxiety mounting. Dad looked at Mom, who nodded almost imperceptibly. He took a deep breath. "I lost my job 3 months ago." The words hung in the air between us. My father, who had worked as an electrician for the same company for over 15 years, who had always been the picture of steady employment and financial stability, had been unemployed for 3 months. 3 months. I repeated, struggling to process this information. "But that would have been right around when you were dealing with the worst of your breakup," Mom finished quietly. "You were so devastated, Emma. We couldn't add to your pain." The pieces began falling into place. "So all those times you came to help me, brought me groceries, helped with my rent deposit?" "We wanted to support you," Dad said firmly. "Your situation was the priority." "But how?" I asked. "I mean, what happened with your job?" Dad's face tightened. "The company was bought out by a larger corporation. They said they weren't making changes, but 6 weeks later they eliminated half the workforce. Last hired, first fired, even though I'd been there 15 years. My heart broke for him. "Dad, I'm so sorry. Have you been looking for another position?" "Of course," he said, but something in his tone suggested it hadn't been going well. "But at 56, in this market, let's just say it's been challenging." I glanced at the papers scattered across the table with new understanding. These weren't random documents. They were job applications, unemployment paperwork, past due notices, and budget worksheets. "Is that why you canceled Christmas?" I asked softly. "Because of money?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We couldn't afford it this year. Not the way we usually do it. The presents, the special food, the decorations. We've been living off our savings, and they're running out faster than we expected. But we were too ashamed to tell you girls the truth, Dad added. We've never not been able to provide for our family. So you decided to just cancel Christmas without any explanation, I said, feeling a mix of relief, heartbreak, and frustration. Instead of telling us what was really happening. We thought it would be easier, Mom said, wiping away a tear. We hoped Dad would find work before the holidays, that this would all be temporary. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All this time, I'd been worried they were rejecting me when they were actually protecting me in their own misguided way. Why didn't you just tell us the truth? I asked. Anna and I could have helped, could have done Christmas differently. Because we're your parents, Dad said simply. Our job is to take care of you, not burden you with our problems. Especially after everything with Ryan, Mom added. You were just starting to seem like yourself again. I sat back in my chair, processing their worried faces. My parents, these pillars of strength in my life, had been silently struggling for months while continuing to support me through my own crisis. You know what? I said, standing up suddenly. I'm calling Anna. She needs to know about this too. Emma, wait. Mom started, but I was already dialing. When Anna answered, I put the phone on speaker and explained everything. There was a long silence after I finished. Dad lost his job 3 months ago? Anna finally said, her voice tight with concern. And you guys didn't tell us because you thought you were protecting us? We didn't want to worry you during finals, Dad replied, his voice small. So instead of trusting us to handle the truth like adults, you decided to cancel Christmas and make us think our family was falling apart. Anna's voice was sharper now, and I could hear the hurt underneath her anger. Another silence. Then Anna's voice stronger. I'm driving down this weekend. We need to figure this out as a family. After we hung up, I looked at my parents. This is what family does. We show up for each other, especially when things are hard. That evening, as we talked more openly than we had in months, a plan began to form. Christmas would happen, but it would be different. Instead of the elaborate celebration they'd always provided, we would create something new that reflected our current reality while honoring what mattered most about our tradition. I want to host Christmas this year, I announced. At my apartment, my parents looked skeptical. Emma, your place is tiny, Mom pointed out gently. And money is tight for you too after the move. It's not about the size of the space or how expensive the meal is, I insisted. It's about being together. Isn't that what you've always taught us? When Anna arrived that weekend, we went into full planning mode. My studio apartment would be a challenge, but we were determined to make it work. We could borrow a folding table from my office, some extra chairs from neighbors, and use Mom's Christmas dishes and tablecloth. Anna took charge of the budget, insisting we split the grocery costs 3 ways. We don't need the usual feast, she said practically. Let's focus on the essentials that make it feel like Christmas. We settled on a small turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls, and 1 pie. Simple, but it would taste like home. While Anna handled logistics, I focused on helping Dad with his job search. As a marketing coordinator, I had experience with resumes and online presence. Dad, your resume is solid, but it looks like it hasn't been updated in 15 years, I told him honestly. Let me help you modernize it. We spent hours updating his LinkedIn profile, creating job alerts, and even practicing interview techniques via video calls. Within a week, he had 3 new interviews scheduled. Meanwhile, Anna discovered that Mom had been quietly selling her handmade crafts online to bring in extra money, something she'd started as a hobby but had been pursuing more seriously since Dad's layoff. Mom, your sales figures are actually pretty good, Anna said, reviewing her accounts. But you're underpricing everything, and these product photos don't do your work justice. That led to an impromptu photo shoot with me styling Mom's crafts while Anna researched competitive pricing. By the end of the weekend, Mom's online shop looked professional and profitable. I never thought my little hobby could actually help our situation, Mom marveled, looking at her updated listings. It's not a hobby if it's bringing an income, Anna replied. It's a business. The week before Christmas was a whirlwind of preparation. My studio apartment was transformed as much as space allowed. We pushed my bed against the wall and borrowed a folding table that, with some creative arrangement, could seat 4 people. I didn't have room for elaborate decorations, but I picked up some small poinsettias and candles to create a festive atmosphere. Christmas morning dawned crisp and clear. I woke early, nervous energy propelling me out of bed to start the turkey. Anna had arrived the night before and was sleeping on an air mattress in my tiny living area. "How's it going?" she asked, appearing in my kitchenette with coffee. "I'm about to stuff this turkey like it's never been stuffed before," I replied, making her laugh. Working in my tiny kitchen required careful choreography. We bumped into each other constantly, had to take turns at the stove, and occasionally had to step into the hallway to let the other person open the oven. But there was something wonderful about the closeness, about working together in a way we hadn't since we were kids, helping Mom with holiday cookies. When our parents arrived at noon, both dressed in their Christmas best, I felt a flutter of nervousness. This was the first time I'd ever hosted my family for a major holiday. "It smells incredible in here," Dad said, handing me a small bouquet of flowers. Every hostess deserves flowers. The simple gesture brought tears to my eyes.
Thank you, Dad.
They took in my transformed space with appreciative glances. "You've created something really special here, Mija," Mom said, her eyes lingering on the table set with her good dishes. We squeezed around the small table, our knees nearly touching, but it felt cozy rather than cramped. When it came time to serve the meal, we faced some logistical challenges. My tiny kitchen couldn't accommodate our usual buffet-style serving, but we managed. As we finally sat down together, I felt overwhelmed with emotion. This wasn't the Christmas I had imagined a month ago. The setting was different, the meal simpler, and all of us changed by recent events. But looking at my family gathered around my little table, I realized we had preserved what mattered most: our connection to each other. "I think this calls for a toast," Dad said, raising his glass. "To Emma and Anna for reminding us what family really means." "To new traditions," Mom added, her voice thick with emotion. "To honesty," I said, meeting each of their gazes. "Even when it's hard." "Especially then," Anna agreed. As we ate, our conversation flowed more naturally than it had in months. No one was hiding difficult truths or walking on eggshells. We talked about Dad's promising job interviews, Mom's growing craft business, Anna's thesis project, and even my slowly healing heart. "I have some news, actually," Dad said as we finished the main course. "Remember that interview I had on Wednesday? They offered me the position yesterday." "Dad, that's wonderful," I exclaimed. "It's not the same salary as before," he admitted. "But it's steady work with good people, and honestly, I'm excited about it." As the afternoon stretched into evening, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in our family dynamic. We weren't just returning to the way things were, we were becoming something new and stronger. The crisis had forced us to be more honest with each other, more willing to both give and receive support. After my parents left and Anna had gone to bed, I sat quietly in my tiny apartment, now a disaster of dishes and moved furniture. Cleanup could wait until morning. In the stillness, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this day. What had begun as a painful rejection, "We're canceling Christmas, we need space," had transformed into an opportunity for deeper connection. My parents' attempt to protect me had ultimately led to a more honest relationship between all of us. And somewhere in the process of supporting them through their crisis, I had found unexpected healing for my own wounded heart. The pain from Ryan's betrayal was still there, but it had receded from an all-consuming presence to just one part of my story. Looking at myself in the bathroom mirror as I prepared for bed, I looked different somehow. More settled, more at peace with uncertainty. I was still Emma, still 26, still rebuilding after heartbreak. But I was also stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected to my family than ever before. Some mistakes, it seemed, could lead to unexpected blessings if we were brave enough to face them honestly together. The days following Christmas brought wonderful news. Dad's new job turned out to be perfect for him, working for a nonprofit that provided home repairs for elderly and disabled residents. The work was meaningful, and his colleagues appreciated his experience and steady demeanor. Mom's craft business continued to grow, especially after Anna set up a proper social media presence for her. By February, she was making enough to significantly help with their monthly expenses. As for me, the experience of supporting my parents through their crisis had given me a new sense of purpose and confidence. I started dating again, slowly and carefully, but with a clearer understanding of what I wanted in a relationship. One evening in spring, as we sat on my parents' back patio enjoying the warm weather, Dad brought up the previous Christmas. "You know," he said reflectively, "I spent so much of my life thinking my job as a parent was to shield you girls from any hardship. Instead, hiding our struggles almost drove us apart," Mom added. "In a way, though, it worked out," I pointed out. "It forced us to have conversations we needed to have. It made us stronger." "What do you think family really means now?" Anna asked. I thought for a moment. "I think it means being brave enough to show up imperfectly for each other. To offer what we have rather than pretending we have what we don't." Mom reached over to squeeze my hand. "When did you get so wise?" "Must be those Martinez genes," I joked, making everyone laugh. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how much our family had changed over the past few months. We'd learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but the foundation of genuine connection. We discovered that asking for help wasn't failure, but an act of trust. Most importantly, we'd realized that the holidays aren't about perfect presentations or expensive gifts. They're about showing up for each other, especially when things are hard. That's the real gift my parents gave me when they canceled Christmas, the opportunity to discover what family truly means and to find strength I never knew I had. Sometimes the best presents come disguised as the worst problems, wrapped in confusion and tied with tears, but containing exactly what we need to grow.